This is a U-joint. All four of these little caps should have needle bearings inside that look like this. Two of my caps look like this. That U-joint is off the front driver's side axle shaft on my 1986 Jeep Comanche. I've got it all busted apart. It's not really that hard of a job. There's a lot of rust involved and a lot of hammering, but you know, it's really not that bad.
Now why don't I believe that?
And that U-joint is what connects your outer axle shaft to your inner axle shaft and allows that thing to turn when you turn the wheel and keep rolling. So it's pretty important. Also, if you're doing this job and you find some heavy rust pitting on your axle shafts and you intend on doing any larger tire size or any serious off-roading, I would suggest maybe upgrading your axles as well at this point. But I'm not doing that, so U-joints it is. There's two things that are really going to help you out when doing this job. One is a good heavy bench vise, and the second is a good heavy sledgehammer. Actually, this is a drilling hammer. It's just fine. So we've got our old U-joint out. What we need to do is slide the new one in this side, get both caps on, and then we'll slide it onto the other axle shaft and get both those caps on, put the clips in, and then we'll be done. Look how easy that is.
Run it by me again?
Let's get started. And in case you're wondering, this is the least Duralast replacement number for it. Well, first thing we need to do is pull one of the caps off. Careful not to let these needle bearings fall out anywhere. Luckily, this thing has a seal on it that should hold them in place, so we should be fine. And you're going to pull another cap off. There we go, something like that. And what we need to do is get that cap started on here, just like that, and flip it over and put the other cap on. That way we've got the needle bearings seated up against this mating surface, and we can start tapping it all back together and not worry about anything falling out.
Hammer time. Hammer time?
Okay, we got this first groove lined up, and this little C-clip just goes right into there, and then we tap it into place. And then this one's almost there on that side. We'll do a little bit more squeezing and get that one all set up. Then we'll switch sides and do the other one. There we go. That's one C-clip. And I'm going to go ahead and tap it with a slide screwdriver just to make sure that it's in that groove. Yeah, we're good. All right, now we got to tap this other cap down. We'll be all set. So here's the first half done. One clip on each side. Make sure it's down the groove. And then we've got to take these caps off and do the other side so we can put this axle back into one piece. Pull these caps, set them facing up so the needle bearings don't go anywhere. Put your other half shaft on, and then put your first cap on that side, flip it over, and let's get the cap put onto this side, and we'll tap everything down into place. All right, I've got at least one of the grooves far enough that we can put a clip back into it. So let's do that before we do anything else, and then we'll get the last side. Oh, come on now. Ow, don't hit your fingers. You're going to hit your fingers. There we go. Okay, got all four clips back in. This U-joint's nice and firm now, and we're ready to put it back in the vehicle. And first thing I'm going to do here before I put the shaft back in is the mounting surface for your hub bearing. It's pretty rusty. Go ahead and clean that out, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put some anti-seize on it. It's not 100% necessary, but if you're ever going to do this again, which is a distinct possibility because it's a U-joint, especially a parts store U-joint, well, clean it up and just make it easier on yourself the next time. Close enough. And then make sure you get anti-seize everywhere, which is easy because as soon as you use anti-seize, it goes everywhere. You could probably also use a regular high temperature grease for this because all you really want to do is keep these two surfaces from rusting together. This is our hub bearing that's going to sit on. See right here, you can see it started to corrode together on the other side of all these spider webs. Yeah, it's not great, but it's not terrible. We're going to reuse this. It's still nice and smooth. I'm going to slide our new U-jointed axle shaft back in. There we go. Got the splines all lined up. That's in there. And you can tell the shaft is fully seated because it has like a dust seal right here. And that should be basically right up against your spindle. And if that's not seated like that, this axle's not in far enough. There's 3 bolts that holds this hub assembly on. I don't think it matters which way you put it on. I think all the bolts line up no matter what. We'll start this one over here. There we go. Top, this is the hardest one to get to. It's still not that hard. Pain to get to, but still not bad overall. And what we're looking for is this flat surface to touch that one to snug all that up. So we're going to go sort of around the horn and snug all of these a little bit at a time. Otherwise, it'll go in whopper-jawed. And if it goes in whopper-jawed, well, that means it's probably cattywampus, and you're in trouble. But one thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to not forget to put the dust shield on, as I have just done. So we're going to pull these bolts back out, and we're going to put a dust shield on for the disc brakes. Now, if you didn't forget to put the dust shield on, then what you would do is keep tightening these in sequence. At least you'll get to see the hub removal technique. Get off of the splines. There we go. Don't ever hit the end of that shaft without a nut or something on it. Here's that dust shield we forgot. You can see which way it goes because clearly there's a triangular pattern here, and there's a pattern with 3 ears on this side. This is 3 ears, and the hub is just triangular. Put your hub back on. Make sure your axle is seated. There we go. There we go. Now, all we're going to do this time is we're going to time lapse me snugging these up so you can see it pull in. There we go. As you can see, these 2 are fully seated. These bolts are all the way through. I don't see any fresh looking threads, which means we got it exactly back where it was before. Next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put your hub nut on. Make sure you put the washer on first. Otherwise, you're going to be taking this off, much like the backing plate for the disc brakes. Okay. And you're going to want to use an impact for this and just go until it stops, and then go a little more. That's probably close. Now you've got like a castle washer, a cotter pin, and this castle washer. There we go, lined up. That one looks at least mostly new. Try not to reuse cotter pins if you don't have to. Sometimes, if you're in a pinch, yeah, you got to reuse it, but you really don't want to. Just brace the disc back in place. Also, now would be a good time to say, if you need to replace anything else along here, rotors, pads, whatnot, so forth, now would be the time to do it because you have to take them off to do this job. There we go. Now we got it. And the caliper bolts on this, they're an Allen head, which I didn't have, but I had a Torx bit that would fit, and it's a T45 if you have to use a Torx. It's not a 1/4 inch, it's not a 5/16, so it's probably metric, but I didn't have that. I had a T45. That seemed to work.
60% of the time, it works every time.
And if you don't do this kind of work all that often, one thing to know if you're replacing calipers is bleeder needs to be at the top so the air can get out. If your bleeder's to the bottom, you got the caliper on the wrong side or you have the wrong caliper. And we're going to put our tire back on. And these are Jeep TJ wheels, I believe. And the tires are 235, 75/15 Westlake Radial SL376. It's sort of a, they call it a mud tire, but it's sort of a split between a mud and an all-terrain. They're really quiet. I like these. I've used them before, and they're load range C. once we've got the other side done, this back down the ground, we'll double check all these with a torque wrench. And now that we've shown you how to put one together, let me show you how it comes apart. And we're going to hang this guy up so it's out of the way. That way you don't put a whole bunch of strain on a questionable flex hose. Pads, rotor. Now the joys of cotter pins. Castle washer, castle nut, whatever you want to call it. Then back to your socket. This one is a 36, in case anybody's wondering. There we go. And we are on to those 3 hub bolts on the back. Like I said, this is not a technically difficult job. It is just a labor-intensive job. The worst part is rust. All right, now that we've got everything freed up, the last step is to get this hub bearing off of here. And there we go. This hub's nice and smooth too. We're just gonna leave that one alone and we'll put that back on. Remember, when you're putting this back together, this goes on before the hub bearing. Wow, look at that. This is the 2-piece shaft. It's a central axle disconnect on your 1980s and 1990s Jeep products. It's the little vacuum disconnect on the axle. This is the central axle disconnect I'm talking about. Vacuum operated. It's got a fork in here, so you've got a shaft coming from your differential to here, and then that outer shaft we just pulled off. It goes all the way out to the wheel. And that's why this is a short shaft with really big splines on it, because you've got a fork, almost like a clutch fork, that comes in and connects the two together. It's kind of weird, but it works. Not great. Don't use this if you're going to put big tires and go heavy off-roading. Just get a later model, no central axle disconnect that goes all the way into the diff. The next thing we need to do is we need to get these little C-clips that are at the inside of each cap tapped out of here so we can push these caps off. Oh, got one. Now, to get this thing out, I'm going to play a game of big socket, little socket. Big socket on the bottom. Make sure it's big enough to put one cap completely in. Little socket on the end of this. And we're going to tap it through, allegedly.
Hit one a little harder.
There we go. That cap is off. You can see it's completely wasted. I've got the outer shaft, at least, off. Now I'm going to take a brass punch and try to get what's left of that cap out of there. There we go. Easy enough. Not easy enough. Very difficult. This shouldn't have split like that as soon as I hit it with a hammer. Whatever. I have got one cap off of the short end of the drive shaft. Now I can get this other clip, hopefully. Then we'll push that other cap back through and we'll be done with this whole mess of disassembly. Hopefully. Oh yeah, look at that. Just needed room. There we go. C-clip out. And man, you can see how rusty and scaly that thing is? That was really on there. All right. Now, I got to tap this cap back off with a game of big socket, little socket. Almost. That cap's nearly off there. This is the worst part of this entire job, in my opinion. Everything else is fairly easy. But if I had a press, this would be much easier. Maybe that's on my shopping list. I don't know. We'll see. Presses are expensive. All right, I think we can pry that cap off at the vise. All right, so now you can see the old U-joint is completely out. We are ready to put the new one in, which you saw me do at the beginning of this video. So I guess we'll end it here so that as I install this one, I can use many, many four-letter words that I've been saving throughout this job to use at the end of it. But since this is a fairly clean channel, I'm not going to video that part. Okay, well, we'll see you next time, and check your U-joints.